Today we are going to install the new Turn Off-Road Ford Bronco SUULM1 billet rear upper control arms. These arms fit the Ford Bronco 2 and 4-door models. Installation time is around 60 minutes. Can be installed by yourself, easier with a friend. With a difficulty level of advanced. You will need this list of tools to get the job done properly. So, gather all these tools, and let's start this installation. Before we begin removing control arms, there is one thing we have to do to access the upper and lower forward mounts. We must move the gas tank by lowering it out of the way. Then, this gives us access to the passenger side forward control arm mount hardware. So let's quickly go through this process before moving on to control arms. First, it would be a good idea to have as little gas in the tank as possible, so you can move it easily. Next, lift your Bronco as high as you can get it safely on jack stands. Please review proper lifting and positioning practices from Ford for your model Bronco. Now, using an 18mm socket, loosen these front two bolts about ½ inch. This gives us the ability to lean the tank downward while keeping it supported. Next, make sure you put a floor jack under the tank plate, as you see here. Then, remove these 6 bolts and set them aside. You will need a long extension to remove these inner bolts. Next, with the tank resting on the floor jack, loosen the hose clamp using a 7mm wrench or socket, and slide the clamp out of the way. This allows the fill tubing to slide off the filler tube when lowering the tank. There is also a small blue hose connection to unplug using a small screwdriver, as you see here. Then, clean the hose if necessary, so no debris falls into your tank. Next, begin lowering the tank slowly, and make sure all wiring and hoses disconnect as needed. Now, you have access to both the upper and lower forward control arm bolts. Now, with the passenger side of the vehicle, we have the gas tank to work around. Since we have it dropped, you can access the forward bolts easily. Let's start by removing the forward and rear control arm factory hardware. Do so by using a 24mm wrench to remove the backing nuts and set them aside. On the axle end of the control arm, you will need to remove a protective cap plate with a T30 Torx bit to access the backing nut hardware. Then, push both bolts through the control arm to remove them. You may have to use a dead blow mallet to push them through, as there is load on the suspension still. Once removed, slide the factory control arm out and take it to a workbench for next steps. Repeat the same process and steps used for the first arm to complete this one as well. Next, we need to set the length of the control arm to match the factory arm. Do this by setting the factory arm on a table, slide in the factory bolt through one end, then slide the billet arm onto the same bolt, as you see here, so they are parallel. Now, with the two arms parallel to each other, loosen the heim joint, and make sure the misalignments are inserted. Turn the heim joint a full to a half turn at a time, until visually the ends line up. At this point, slide the factory bolt through this end of the arm. The bolt should slide through without effort. If it does not, turn the heim in, or out as needed, until it does. Next, once you have it set, put a dab of blue thread lock on the heim threads, as shown here, and tighten the jam nut. Make sure the heim joint is vertically straight, and that it doesn't move when tightening. Now, pull out the flange bushings, as you see here, and using the supplied grease, lightly grease the inside of the red polyurethane fixed bushing on each side, and then the face of each side. Next, slide the flange bushings back in, wipe off any excess grease, and you are ready to install the arm. Now, grab the arm, and slide the bushing end into the forward position, with the decorative milling facing outward. Then, slide the factory bolt through from the back side, and thread on the backing nut. Next, with the misalignments in place, slide the heim joint into position, line up the holes, and insert the rear bolt. This may take some effort, and tweaking of the axle, to get this lined up to slide the bolt through, but be patient, and it will go. Once in place, thread the backing nut on, and tighten down both forward and rear bolts. Refer to the latest torque specs found online to properly torque the hardware. Now, with the axle side hardware in place and tightened down, reinstall the protective cap plate, and tighten down with a T30 Torx bit. Repeat the same process and steps used for the first arm to complete this one as well. With all the suspension links in place, now we can begin to reinstall the gas tank. First, double check and make sure you have tightened down all the link hardware one last time. Then, make sure all the wire plugs and harnesses on top of the tank are reinstalled before we raise the tank into place. Next, grab a friend to help you out with these next steps. Then, while one person jacks up the tank, the other can guide the filler hose back into place on the tube, as you see here. Now, with the hose in place, reconnect the blue air vent connector and reinstall the hose clamp on the filler tube. Then, with the tank now in place, thread in the tank bolts and tighten them down. Release the jack, and you are done. Congratulations, that completes your turn off-road billet rear upper control arm install. These turn off-road billet rear upper control arms are the perfect way to dress up and stylize your suspension. They not only are showstoppers and look amazing under your Bronco, but they also add strength, protection, and reliability to your suspension. Milled out of one piece of billet aluminum, you won't have to worry about any terrain. If you have the whole billet suspension package, your Bronco will never run or look better than with this tough and rugged suspension. Until your next turn product install, be safe out there. If you have any questions during your product installation, don't hesitate to contact us via phone or email. We are here to help.